Okay, so as we start here, we're going to be moving on to learning plan number 2, which is going to be looking at the Sketcher. In our book, this is going to be chapter 2. So let's go into learning plan number 2. And under learning plan number 2, we've got lecture videos, and then we also have the homework assignment. So we're going to start off. You'll notice that there isn't a presentation this time because it's truly kind of tutorials. I'm going to do a demonstration out of our chapter, and then I'm going to kind of let you go. And then I'll talk about what you're going to do for your homework when we get to the end here, okay? Now, as we know with parametric software, having the previous experience with SolidWorks, we know that we need to sketch before we start, making the actual part, extruding or revolving or whatever it might be. So where we're starting here in Creo is also on that sketch level. So as we look at, I'm gonna go to our textbook first. Oh, I gotta open up my document camera. Just a second here. See, I forgot this part of my production checklist. Doesn't take long. Okay, we're up. So under here I have our chapter opened up. This is going to be chapter 3. This is going to be the Sketcher. And we're just going to kind of work through a couple of these items before we get into like pulling up the software and looking at the things, okay? So as we look here at chapter 3 underneath, you'll notice that they have some objectives at the top here, but I'm going to kind of just page through. It kind of seemed silly to do a PowerPoint presentation when I was truly just in the book here. All right, so as I zoom into the book, this is on page 27 where chapter 3 starts. You'll notice that it expands out the menu for sketching, okay? So there's a ton of different options when we get into that sketching ribbon. Now, couple things, and this is consistent with a lot of different softwares. There are stacked commands in certain cases, and if there is a stacked command, we saw it in AutoCAD, we saw it in SolidWorks, you're going to see that little triangle in the corner of the icon, and that'll let you know, for instance, circle. You can put a circle in a number of different ways depending on the information or the outcome that you want. So there might be, okay, center identifying the center, or a circle identifying the center and the radius. Or it might be, let's generate a circle through 3 points, or tangencies, or whatever it might be. So when you hit the little triangle, if you would, all of a sudden you're going to have a cascading effect of options. And that's what they're kind of getting across here with this illustration. So what it gives you is there's a lot more to that ribbon than what's actually that you actually see, because there are stacked icons underneath. Now, we pick the icon with our left mouse button. Remember, Creo does a little bit different stuff with their left, middle, and right mouse buttons. So we sometimes get a little frustrated, especially coming from a SolidWorks. Those mouse buttons work a little bit differently. So that's always going to be, in the beginning here, kind of part of that learning curve. So we pick just like normally with our left mouse button, but that middle mouse button is kind of the special one in Creo. So we'll talk about how that plays in. Now, as we look at entering into the Sketcher, we're going to do that directly. Instead of going in through the part, we're going to go in through the Sketcher. So you'll see how that's a little bit different when we open up Creo. But before we get there, I want to show you this section starting on page 29. Okay, in the middle here, it looks at the Sketcher Tools Explained. Okay, Sketcher Tool Explained. Now, because you have the experience that you do with SolidWorks, which is awesome, and you're going to find that even when you go out in industry, let's say you work for a company and they don't even have SolidWorks or Creo, they might have NX or CATIA. Those are 2 other parametric softwares. Now, with the experience that you've had in these other 2 parametrics, you know how parametrics works. And you're going to find that there are going to be some similarities, but it's always that interface side of things that you got to kind of figure out in order to operate that software. And it becomes easier. So here in Creo, my expectation is with the experience that you've had learning SolidWorks, you already kind of have that base. I'm not going to have to explain a ton to you in terms of, the capabilities of the software. It's just going to be the nuances of how do I do this in Creo like I used to do it? Now it's different than when I did it when I was in SolidWorks. And as an adult learner, And something I want to encourage you to do is to kind of not be afraid of the process of kind of figuring it out yourself sometimes. And because you have that experience with SolidWorks, you do already have a good base for problem solving parametric software now, okay? So my whole point of this is, I used to have an instructor, his name was Bob Moore. He actually worked here when I was going to school here. And when one of the classes that he taught were CAD based, and that's when CAD was very new. And he was a great instructor, but he frustrated us a lot. And the thing that he would say to us all the time, especially when it came to CAD software, was, play with it. Just play with it. So we would have a question, and he'd be like, just play with it a little bit. And we would be like, well, tell us how to do it. I just want to do it. I want to move on. But his whole point in that was, you learn a lot through the process of kind of taking a couple steps forward, and then, now I got to go back a little bit, but then making progress again. I want you to be comfortable with kind of hunting around, trying something, seeing if it works, and figuring it out. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm going to be like, I'm not helping you, but I also am not going to prescribe you step by step how to do something either, okay? There's going to be drawing guides that you're going to have a little bit later on, but I'm not necessarily going to show you from a drawing from here's how you open up to here's how you create to here's how you drop the dimensions, because we're second year now. Okay, I'm gonna kind of expect that you take a little bit of this learning on, and that you would be ready for that based on your experiences. Truly, when you get out in industry too, you're going to have updates to software, and in recent years, most of Creo and SolidWorks have been like tweaks, on their revisions. But there always is going to be, like every 7 to 10 years, a major revision where it all kind of, the interface is kind of blown up, and it's going to look a lot different. And then all of a sudden, you're not going to have a class that's 90 hours where you can spend learning it. You're going to be on the job, and you've got stuff to do, and you're going to have to kind of figure it out as you go. So I'm not saying that to scare you off, but I also want you to realize that this is going to be part of how you're going to continue to evolve in the future as well. So I just want you to be ready to play with it and to kind of figure it out yourself. But you have resources. You have me, and you have your book. Now, the nice thing about this book that I like, and it's similar to the one that we had in SolidWorks and in AutoCAD, is you have this opportunity to practice with the tutorials as you go through, and then it kind of builds your confidence to do the actual work at the end that I assign. So that's what I'm gonna demonstrate one of the tutorials at the beginning here. But before I do, I want to bring your attention to this page 29. And this starts out the sketching tools explained. So when we look back at page 27 at the bottom of here, each one of these icons can be expanded out into additional options. They are writing out how to use each one of those options, okay? So we go from page 29, and it has the corresponding icon, okay, all the way to page 47, the top of page 47, okay? Now, my point in that is I would not, and I will not, go through each and every one of those commands and demonstrate them for you, because you would get nothing out of that, okay? But what I want you to know is when we bump up against it, whether it's in a tutorial or if it's in a problem that I assign to you, and you're kind of struggling with, how do I put the line in again, or how am I gonna put this circle so it's tangent again? You have all of this to kind of go back to, and it gives you how you're going to do it. Whether it's selecting the features first and then hitting the actual icon, or if it's selecting the icon first and then going through and selecting afterwards. You'll get the information here if you can't kind of figure it out. So I just want to make sure that you understand that this is a resource for you, and that you're not to ignore it, because it can help you kind of to, move through when you do bump up against some difficulties, or you're not sure what to do next. And we'll be referring back to those as well in the tutorial that I'm going to be doing, so you can kind of see how that works too. All right, so now where we're at is we are ready to, on page 47, we're ready to start the tutorial here. This is the Sketcher practice. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to open up Creo. So on my desktop, I've got my Creo icon, and I'm going to double click on that, and I'm going to launch it. And as you know, just like we did yesterday, we are not going to have to redo our configuration as long as we're on the same machine that we did yesterday, that we logged into and we're on. And I should be, and I'm going to kind of prove that. The things that we looked at yesterday should still be in place in terms of that configuration that we set early on. So I'm going to X out of these two. And what I'm going to do is, before I set my working directory, I'm going to go to File, I'm going to go to Options, and you'll notice in System Appearance here, it's still on default. We didn't change that. But if we go to Model Display, it didn't hold. This was supposed to be isometric. Did I not apply it? If you guys are looking at yours, did it hold? And this is 6. Apply. Apply. Just want to make sure. And then I'm going to go to Sketcher. Number of decimal places. I'm going to leave that at 2 for right now. And then I'm going to go down here and make the sketching plane parallel. I wonder why. So I'm going to hit OK here. I'm going to hit yes and OK. Did your in the room? Did your configurations hold, Nick?
I'm sure.
Yours did.
I'm not sure.
Oh, you're not sure. Dylan, did yours? Did you happen to look?
There's some of the settings did, and some I don't know.
You're not sure. Joe, you're on. Mine didn't hold either. All right, that I need to look at because that's not supposed to be the case. So let's go in and change the stuff we're supposed to. So I'll go through it more slowly this time. That is so weird. Okay. Educational. So system appearance, we're leaving that at default. Model display, isometric on the top here. And then our set shade quality to 6. Okay. And I already hit apply, so that's grayed out for me. And then I'm going to go to Sketcher. And then we're going to scroll down and make sure that make the sketching plane parallel. Now we can set the decimal places here too, but I'm gonna leave it at 2 for right now. All right, and I'm gonna hit OK. So now they're for that session. All right, that's all right. I'll track that down because that we shouldn't have to reset again, but we did have to today. I'm not sure why. I'll have to check with our admin. Sometimes, I don't know. I'm gonna have to check with them to see why that didn't happen. All right, so now what we're ready to do is our normal dealio. So we're gonna go in and we're gonna set our working directory. So I'm gonna go up to File. I'm gonna go down to Manage Session. And it's going to be select the working directory, okay? And now I have to navigate to where I want to go. So remember, that doesn't automatically remember it from last time, and it never does. So I'm going to go to back here to my computer. I'm going to go on my H drive. That's where I'm setting my working directory, Creo 1 2022. Now yours can be, you just have to select it and then hit OK. Now, to check that, I like to just go down here to the working directory and I look on the top here. Is it what I want it to be? And the very last one should be that directory. And then you can just X out of here and minimize that. Okay, so we're ready to get started now. So as we look back at page 47, look there, page 47, it wants us to then go here and start a new file, but we're going to pick Sketcher this time, not Part, okay? So we're going to pick Sketcher, or Sketch, I think it is. So I'm going to say New, and we come up with our dialog box, and we're going to do Sketch, and that's all that it's going to be. Now, you want to give this a name, okay? And I'm trying to think if they dictate to us what our name should be. Actually, I'm glancing, I'm not seeing it. So, Sketcher exercises. So let's do Sketcher exercises. Sketcher _ exercises. Okay. And we're just going to say, okay. All right. Now, when we go into Sketcher by itself and not into part, okay, what happens is you'll notice that none of the part stuff is here. We don't see extrude. We don't see, the ability to make an assembly. So we have fewer menus because we're just focusing on the Sketcher. Okay, so we're just going to create sketches and we're not going to do any extruding or revolving or anything like that with them. All right, so when we open up, it immediately goes into Sketch. So you'll notice that that's highlighted up here on top. And all of these are the icons that we have available to us. And any one of them that have this little down arrow next to it is going to have that stack underneath it. So like additional options. So when I pick it with my left mouse button and I click on it, it's going to expand out all the different options that I can also choose from, okay? I can also choose from. So you'll notice that for many of these. So it's kind of deceiving, like, oh, there's only these things to do. Nope, there's more. They're just underneath there, okay? So just be aware of that stacking effect on each one of these. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to start kind of drawing some very simple things here. So on page 48, and go back over here. On page 48, we're going to draw a line, a triangle, and then kind of this figure that we see right here. And we're just going to draw it on the screen. Bless you. And we're going to outline each one of those shapes using the line command, okay? So the line command, if we go over, it's about 1/3 of the way in on the very top here, okay? And I'm just going to click on it. This is just a line chain, okay? So I'm going to click on it, and when I get down into the drawing area, you can kind of see that my cursor changed a little bit. So I'm ready to lay down a point, and I can just lay down a point by left-clicking anywhere on the screen. So I'm going to start over here. I'm going to draw that line at an angle, okay? Now, it's going to keep going. To stop it from going, I can hit my middle mouse button, okay? I'm just going to click down on that roller, and I'm going to do it once. Whoops, once, and it ends it. But notice that I'm still in. When I only hit it once, I'm still in the command because notice we still have that little X on the corner of my cursor, and it means that I'm ready for the next point. Now, if I was done here, I could hit that middle mouse button a second time, and it would then end the command, and it would give me the dimensions, the weak dimensions for this feature, okay? I'm going to continue on. I'm going to go back up into that line command, and I am going to draw the triangle. Now, as I draw, notice that it tries to make assumptions. It's kind of like tries to do us a favor, okay? And what it's doing is it's like, oh, do you want that top point in line? I don't. So you don't want to click if you know that that is not going to be a constraint that you want to put on it. So I'm going to go a little bit higher here, and then I'm going to go down, and then I'm going to go over, and then it's going to kind of snap to that point. Now, it could keep going, but I'm going to just hit this once. I'm going to remain in the command, and then I'm going to draw the other shape at the end here. Now, notice it wants to make things parallel, and I'm like, no, no, no. So intentionally try not to do that unless it's like in line like this bottom one is, and that's okay. And then I'm going to do once and twice middle click, and now it ended the command, and it put in my dimensions for me. Okay, weak dimensions. These aren't the strong dimensions. Okay. Now I want to show you a couple ways to delete if we want to. So there is this command up here called delete segment. If I click on that, how that works is I'm going to use my left mouse button, and I'm going to depress it and hold it, and I can draw this line here. Now, as I cross over a feature, a line and a line and a line, each one that I cross over is going to then be deleted when I release that hold, okay? Another way that I can delete, and all I need to do is I'm going to left click and hold, whoopsie. Oh, I'm in the command, I'm so sorry. So let me escape is another friend of yours. You can hit escape to end a command at any time, or that middle mouse button twice. I should have done it twice. So now I'm out of the command. It's not selected. The other way that I can delete is I can create a window, and anything in that window will be selected, and then I can delete. So I'm going to start with my left mouse button. I'm going to hold it. I'm going to make, they refer to it as an imaginary box around. And when I release it, anything that was in that box is going to be selected. And then I can simply hit the delete key on my keyboard and those items are gone. Okay. So those are two ways that you can delete if you wanted to. Okay. So delete segment and then in a window, or you can simply select as well. And then you can delete. So you could singly select where you see where this select button is right here. You can select, and I could just do a single selection. And if I would hit the delete key right now, that item would go away. Okay, you can do it one at a time as well. I'm just going to hit escape to get out of that. All right, so there you have it. There you have it. Now, let's say I want to kind of bring this into, you know, a little bit larger on my screen and kind of center it. You'll notice that we have a view, a refit on this toolbar that's kind of floating at the top. Now you can move that toolbar if you want to, but I find it's convenient where it's at. And I'm just going to click it, and it's going to refit it to kind of bring things back in. And so you can kind of see that maximized on your screen. You can also zoom with your roller. We did this the last time we were together. You can roll out and in, and it's going to bring it in and out, and it's going to center wherever your cursor is on the screen. Or you can do it according to the, you know, the pluses and minuses here, and you can refit. And then again, use your roller to kind of get it in where you need it to be. All right. So that's a little bit of that kind of thing. Now, if we go back to our book, we are going to kind of continue on here. Okay. So we are going to create what we see here. We're going to first start by, we have the outside already here. We're going to put a circle on the end, and its center is going to be at the midpoint of our vertical line. And then we're going to add two circles. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do that delete segment to get rid of this inner portion here. Now, a couple things. The two centers, the one of the smaller circle here and the larger circle on the end, are going to be in line with one another. All right, so I'll show you how to make sure that you do that. So whenever we're creating our parts, just like we did in SolidWorks, you kind of have this like design intent in mind. And as we're creating it, we're incorporating those constraints, if you would. I'm gonna minimize that, and I'm gonna add the circles. So I'm gonna find the circle command, which is just two below, and I'm gonna do the center radius circle, so the one that's active there. I'm gonna click on it, and when I come down here, and I'm going to go on this line, and you'll notice that when I get close to the midpoint, it snaps to it. I want to be on that midpoint. I want those 2 points to be coincident to one another. So I'm going to click when it's there, and then when it gets to the end point, same thing. I want those to be coincident. So anytime I change this, that radius of that end piece is going to go along with it. So now that I've created it, I'm going to go once, I'm going to go twice, and I'm out of the command. Okay. Now, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of the portions that I don't want here. So I'm going to go back to that delete segment, and I'm just going to left click and hold, and then draw over these two segments. And now I have the shape, the outside shape that I want, or the perimeter shape that I'm looking for. Then I'm going to add the two smaller holes on the interior here. So I'm going to go back to the circle command, and I'm just going to drop the first one a little bit higher. Right there. And now I'm still in the circle command, and you'll notice that it's going to want to make assumptions. Do you want this in line? And I'm not. I don't want it. I want it lower, but I do want it in line with this one. Remember how we said that those two are in line with one another. So I'm going to kind of go down here. I'm going to select, and as I create this circle, it's going to kind of snap to, do you want this equal to the size of that circle that's over there on the left that it has highlighted? And I do. I want those to be the same size. So I'm going to click that. Now I could continue to make additional circles, but I'm good. So I'm just going to middle mouse button, and I'm done with the command. Okay. Now the next thing that I like to do is I like to just kind of move these things so that I can actually make sense of them. I got to select the actual, I got to select this one, the actual, you kind of see what I did there. The dimension was close to the edge here. So when I selected the dimension, what I thought was, it actually selected the feature and it was moving it while I was pushing my cursor. I had to just hit escape to stop that. And then I went back and I selected the dimension itself. So same thing here, make sure that dimension is selected. Thing here, select. I'm gonna pull this one out. And okay, the radius is over here, that's fine. Okay, all right. Oh, and I'm gonna pull this one off, just so I can see them. Sometimes when they're on the part, they're hard to see. So it's only for that reason. If you're fine with the way it looks, then leave it, okay? It's not a big deal, not a requirement. Okay, so now what I wanna do is I wanna dimension it so that I get the dimensions so that they look like what we see at the bottom of page 49, okay? So I'm going to kind of march around. Some of my dimensions might be okay, but some of them aren't. They're not coming from the same spot, the right spot that I want it to. And this has to do with how the part is designed, how it's going to be used later on, and what the relationships are that are important in its final form. So what's really cool about parametric software, no matter which one you're using, whether it's SolidWorks, Creo, CATIA, NX, Inventor, you get to, and the power is in, putting this design intent into your models, okay? So that they're gonna react the way you want them to and perform the way you want them to. So design intent here is based on where the dimensions are coming from. So I want to duplicate this. So kind of have that in mind in front of you as I'm doing this, because I'm not gonna go back and forth all that much. So first of all, I'm gonna start here. You'll notice that this dimension coming up from the bottom is consistent. And I'm just gonna double click it and I'm gonna put in the number that they have here. It's not so much about the number, it's about where the dimension is. Okay, so now that made that small. Then the next one that I'm gonna do is I kind of like doing that's an overall. I'm not gonna do that one because that's not what I need. But I'm gonna do the height, the overall height this way. So I'm gonna go to my radius here. And this radius needs to be, actually, no, I need the height to be 3, not the radius. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to go to the dimension function over here because there's not a dimension for the value that I want in the way that I want it. I want the 3-inch dimension to be top bottom. I don't want a radius of 1.75, right? I want 3.5 top to bottom. So I'm going to put that dimension in. Now I'm going to click, and I'm going to now select the top line, select the bottom line, and these are left clicks. And now I'm going to go over to the right, and I'm going to use my middle mouse button, the roller. I'm going to depress it, and that's going to be the placement of the dimension. The middle mouse button places the dimension, not the left. You select your entities with the left, and then you position with the middle mouse button. That's a huge difference from SolidWorks. Not huge, you'll get used to it. But then I use Creo first semester, and actually a little bit later in the semester, I'm going to be teaching SolidWorks too. And I'm looking forward to having SolidWorks and Creo in the same semester because I'm going to have to like reprogram my brain every time when I have class. Okay, so my overall height is going to be 3.5, right? 3.5. Enter. There we go. Oops. How come why is it at 4? I know why it's at 4. Because my configuration file, I need to set my decimal places. Okay, so I'm going to go back up here, and I'm going to go to my options, and I'm going to go to Sketcher, and I'm going to put in the number of decimal places. I'm going to we'll put in 2. I thought it was set to 2. Something's not right here. I have a feeling something's not right. And I don't think it's the software. Okay. Now, there's not going to change all the dimensions to 2, but the new dimensions that I put in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this one, and I'm going to say 3.5, enter. 5, enter, and it's not changing it. Okay, so what we're going to do is I am going to select this dimension. I'm just going to delete it. Delete it. Here we go. That's the radius. I'm going to get rid of my 4-inch dimension, delete, and we'll leave that there for now, and I'm going to add it back in. And I want it to be the 3.5. Why is it? So I got to get rid of the radius of 2. So just bear with me. It's going to be 3.5, enter. There we go. Sorry, I'm a little baffled and why this is being difficult. So, and why the configuration didn't hold. And I'm just a little like, is there something a little wonky going on with the software right now? So we'll push forward. I'm sorry about that. So we're going to continue to kind of go around and put our values in. So over here, this was 0.67. I might have to delete that dimension. I am. So I actually have to delete the dimension. Delete. It's not gonna let me do it. It's not holding my 2 places. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over the top of it. I don't like this. There we go. 0.67, enter. There we go. I'm having to redo these dimensions. Okay, so now I have that one in there. The next dimension is going to be, I'm going to hit the dimension. I'm going to go from the bottom line to the center of this hole, and I'm picking those with my left mouse button. Now, I want to pan over a little bit. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to hold my middle mouse button over down, and I'm going to pan over, left, right, up, down. And then I'm going to place my dimension, my middle mouse button right here. And this dimension needs to be 2.63. There we go. That's up there. Now, the size of this hole right now is set at 1 inch. Okay. I'm going to hit the dimension. I'm going to select it. I'm going to middle mouse button where I want it to go. And now it's putting a new one in there. Now, this is a 0.94, but that's a radius dimension, right? Now, there is a difference in how you select for a radius and for a diameter, okay? So I'm going to show you, if we go into the sketching tools and we go to the dimension section, let me go back over here. Here's the dimension. On page 41 starts the different ways that we can do dimensions, okay? Now, if we turn the page, under that dimension, we will notice that a dimension for a radius, we are going to select the arc by pressing the left mouse button and then position with your middle mouse button, okay? If you want a diameter, you're going to select the arc or the circle with that left mouse button twice, okay? So the first time I did it, and it was intentional, I selected once and I placed it with my middle mouse button and it was a radius. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to redo that dimension, diameter. I'm going to click, and then I'm going to position with my middle mouse button, and now it's a diameter. So you have to select the circle 2 times, click, and then it becomes a diameter. Now, over here, what happened is you'll notice that there's this menu, and it says, wait a second, you've got 2 dimensions for the same thing. We can't have that. Which one do you want? And then what you do is you select the one that you don't want. Notice the one that's selected is the most current that we put in there. So the 2 inches selected, I want that one. I want to get rid of the radius. So notice that number 2 here, and I just have it selected. I delete it, and now I'm okay. Now I can put in my value, which is, I think it was 0.94, right? 0.94. There you go. Now, the other thing about this hole here is when we created it, we set the constraint and we stopped it when we saw that equal sign. So notice that it changed the size of both the smaller circles, okay, which is nice. All right, so we've got those in. Let's see, what other dimensions do we have? All right, now I need to dimension the location of this circle to the center of that half circle on the end. So I'm going to add the dimension. I'm going to click center with left, click center with left, place with my middle mouse button. And this number is 2.89. Oops. There we go. And then I'm going to go from that same place to the outer one, 3.69. So dimension, center, center, both are left clicks. And then I am going to place with my middle mouse button, and that's going to be 3.69. There we go. Okay. All right. Now, the last dimension we need to get in here is going to be that overall dimension of 9.64. So if I'm in dimension here, I'm going to start from this line. I'm going to pick that line. I'm going to pick this circle, okay? And then I'm going to middle mouse button down here, okay? So I've got my 9 inches, and it needs to be 9.64. There we go. And I think that might be it. Right? So, cool. So this is the drawing. Now, if you're having difficulties getting to the end point here, okay, you may have to, sometimes students will actually put a point in place, okay? So for instance, I'm going to undo that last command that I did, the last dimension. You can put a point on that quadrant. Okay, so I'm going to select point here. I'm going to move around, and it's going to find that quadrant. I'm going to click to it, and it makes it coincident. Now to get out of here, I just hit my middle mouse button, and now I can see there's a point there. So if you're unable to select on that radius, then what you can do is you can now dimension to the point, and then to the line, and then place with your middle mouse button, and this is going to be your 9.64. There you go. Okay, so kind of 2 ways to do that if you wanted to. Okay. Questions so far? It takes a little playing around because, again, you're used to SolidWorks, so some of these different ways. So again, most dimensions are going to be like you have to pick or select with your left mouse button or left mouse button, and then you place it with your middle mouse button. Okay, place it where you want it with your middle mouse button. Okay, on the next page, they want us to change the dimensions now. So if we look back at that page, they want us to match the dimensions to this. Match the dimensions to this. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to go back over to Creo. Okay. And I'm going to switch the dimensions to the numbers that they want us to have. So let's see here. I'm going to start with, this is going to be 3 inches. Double click, and then you can just put the number in, 3.64. There we go. The overall height, that's still, oh, it's 3 inches now. So I'm going to double click on this. I'm going to go 3. Okay. And then the height of the holes, this one is actually 1 inch now. Goes down below. This height is 0.5, right? And I'm going to move them around in a little bit. Oh, I also have an angle dimension here. I can put that one in. I think I forgot it. Angle. So I'm going to select, and then place with my middle mouse button. And this is going to be 40 degrees. Okay. Now I got to look at my hole size, and that's supposed to be 0.75. So I'm going to double click on that diameter of that hole. It's going to be 0.75. And I'm just kind of looking here, and then 7.5 on the overall length. 7.5. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to hit escape to get out of the dimension mode. And now once I'm out of the dimension mode, I can move my dimensions if I want to. You don't have to. When you dimension like this and you kind of put things where they need to be, it's a good habit to get into, because then when you create the drawing from your model, it'll remember those placements, and then it just saves you a little bit of work. Okay, saves you a little bit of work. All right, So we've kind of, first laid down, the outline, the perimeter, put the holes in place. We've changed some dimensions now and kind of worked with things. So this is really kind of the start of it. Oh, one more thing they have us do in this tutorial before I stop this one is they have us add reference dimensions. Now, as you know, reference dimensions are there kind of just as an extra. So, so for instance, a reference dimension is something that it's nice to know, but it's not going to be checked to. So if I click reference dimension and I click on the arc here and I place it with my middle mouse button, notice it says a reference of 1.5 radius, okay? I could also do the same thing for the length of this line. So if I select this and I place it out here, middle mouse button, it references that length because that length has been determined by the other dimensions that are there, all right? Another reference dimension would be the second hole. So the other one that's not dimensioned and I place it with my left mouse button, I could put a reference in. Now, notice it did a radius though. How do I get the diameter in? Do you remember?
Double click.
Yes, I have to double click it. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to hit escape to get out of the reference dimension. I'm going to select that and I'm going to hit delete and I'm going to go back into reference dimension, double click it and then place it and there's my diameter. Okay? Yeah. I think that's all of them. Cool. Questions? Now, this is a tutorial to just kind of warm us up. I'm not, for this particular unit, for this learning plan, I'm not going to assign any of the tutorials. I want you to play around with this. And what they do in the pages after this, okay, is they continue on. They have you delete what we just created, and then they have you create some circles. They walk you through the process of adding tangent lines, and then mirroring over center lines, and so on. So there's a number of pages here to go further with it. I encourage you to go through the tutorial because what's nice about it is it gets you familiar with a lot of different types of commands in the Sketcher and what it's capable of doing and the right way to do it. If you are working on these and you're unsure, like it's not working the way I think it should, then you find that command back here and it'll tell you the sequence, okay, as well. But again, where you're at with parametric software, I think you're gonna be able to kind of peck around a little bit and kind of get the feel for it and kind of figure things out too, all right? Usually people in this field, that's kind of like their jam, okay? They like kind of playing around with something and figuring it out. You're usually not always the instructions manual person, right? If you get something you want to assemble it, you just start putting it together, right? Anybody kind of like that? Yeah. Okay. So I anticipate a lot of you are going to be like, I just want to start. All right. I'm going to start drawing and I'm going to figure this out. I'm not going to worry about the user's manual, but I just want to remind you it's here because if you start getting frustrated, I'm going to be like, hey, did you have a chance to look back at? Did you check that out? And you might say no, and I'm like, oh, okay, then check there first because you'll see that it actually works. So so I encourage you to do that. Now, let's look at your assignments, okay? Now there's a lot of tutorial in there, so I'm going to let you decide as the adult learner that you are where you feel that you're comfortable. So if you want to do more of the tutorial, redo this tutorial, you want to just jump into the homework, I'm going to let you decide how you want to do that. But the more practice you get on the tutorials and kind of figuring them out, I'm going to tell you is going to help you as you do the assignments then too. They're going to go a little bit more smoothly. Let's look at Blackboard. See what we got. So here is the homework assignment folder. All right. Now, your homework assignment folder will open up, if it's not available yet, when you get your 85% or better on your LP1. Okay, so if you've already done that, there's a chance that it might be there. Oh, I'm sorry, go back one. Now, I've got to read this. So you'll notice that it says pick 5 Sketcher problems from pages 69 to 74. Okay, so at the end of this chapter, okay, pages 69 to 74, I'm going to go back underneath. All right, there are a number of problems, okay? So the first one here, 3.1, 3.2. These are all options. You get to choose. I want you to choose 5 of them. 3.3, 3.4, 3.5, 3.6, and it goes all the way to 312.
These look fun.
Yeah, yeah. So pick 5, and I encourage you to challenge yourself. Okay, challenge yourself. Don't just pick the super easy ones. But they're not always, when they look simple, they're not always as simple as you think either. There might be some things there. So what I want to do is tomorrow, I'm not going to lecture. The next time that we're together, I'm not going to lecture. It's going to be work time. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we are going to then pick up on next week, then taking questions that you might have. So I want you to play with it. And that's, I'm like getting my inner Bob Moore. I'm going to have you play with this, start with the tutorials, and then work towards, okay, I want to do some of these problems. And then next week, I'll take questions on Sketcher problems that you have. Okay? All right. So that's going to kind of be the next lecture that we do here in the learning plan. But if you wanted to, like I said, I encourage you to do as many of those tutorials that you get to the point where you feel kind of comfortable. And then if you want to start working on the homework, pick the 5 that you want to do. And then that's going to be what you hand in. So as far as handing in, you're going to do that same process where you take the screen snip of the screen so that I can see your sketch. And then you're going to put that into a document, convert to a PDF, and then upload to the Dropbox here. Okay. And when you get to that point, if you have some questions, let me know. All right, so that's all that I have for kind of our first Learning Plan 1 lecture. The next time that we're together, we'll start looking at some questions that you have on homework problems. Okay, all right, so I am going to stop sharing and stop recording.